Kehpri Eros. He was a really bubbly, lovey baby. He did some pretty amazing things in his short-lived life.
Welcome to Still a Part of Us, a place where moms and dads share the story of their child who was stillborn or who died in infancy. I'm Winter.
And I'm Lee. We are grateful you joined us today. Please note that this is a story of loss and has triggers.
Thanks to our lost parents who are willing to be vulnerable and share their children with us.
If you're listening to this podcast, just know that on our YouTube channel there are pictures and videos that are related to the stories that are being shared.
Subscribe and share it with a friend that might need it and tell them to subscribe. Why? Because people need to know that even though our babies are no longer with us, they're still a part of us. Welcome to Still a Part of Us. I'm just so pleased to be able to talk with Emily today. She reached out to me and I'm glad she was actually very persistent because she sent me a couple of different emails and DMs and stuff. And she really wants to talk about her son, Kehpri. And so thank you so much, Emily, for coming on and being willing to share your son with us today. Well, so welcome.
Of course, Winter. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, for sure. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself, what your family looks like, maybe where you're located in the country? You don't have to give us totally exact details, but just a little bit of a general idea so we know where you're at and yeah. So
Of course. I'm from Oregon, and I currently live with my father after the loss of Kehpri.
mhm,
Um, I am having a little bit of issues finding work right now,
mhm,
so just kind of going through the flow.
yeah.
Right now I am battling cervical cancer.
Oh my gosh.
So,
Oh my gosh.
um, yeah, I got diagnosed in June of this year, or of 2024 actually.
Oh my gosh.
Um, so I'm kinda just going through life, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. That's an understatement right there. I'm like, I'm like so shocked. I'm like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that it feels yeah. Um Emily, so tell me actually, can you give me a little bit of a relationship to when Kepri was born at the time of this recording? How long ago was that when he was born?
He was born April 19th of 2024,
Okay.
so about coming up on, 9 months?
Yeah. So it
Yeah.
hasn't even been quite a year, everybody. At
Mm,
least at the time that we're recording it. And then like 2 months later you were diagnosed with cervical cancer, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
yes. Yes,
Oh my
ma'am.
gosh. Like, can we let's just acknowledge how year 2024 probably was real crappy is all I can say.
Yes, ma'am.
I
Yes.
am so sorry that
It happens.
oh
I'm just hoping for a better year.
yeah, right? Yeah. Okay, and so you at the time, what did your family look like at the time of your his birth? So were you living
Um,
with your dad at that time or
yes.
okay,
Yeah.
awesome. And
Um,
any were you partnered at that time or
no.
okay. So father was not in the picture or anything and so you were just taking care of this by yourself. Um
Yeah.
and okay, so then what was I going to ask you? Oh, you've got there's just so much stuff that you have had going on. So, but for you as yourself, is there any things that you like to do in your spare time, hobbies or anything like that?
Um, I have a pet spider I
You have a
take
pet
care of.
spider?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Is it like a tarantula or
No, it's a little jumping spider.
oh, is it?
Little harmless thing, yes.
Adorable. That's super fun. My kids would kind of love that actually, I think.
They're cute.
Yeah, they are. Okay, awesome. And have you always lived in Oregon? Is that
No, I've moved around a lot.
have you? Okay.
Yes.
And then so tell me, I guess then let's talk about what happened when you got pregnant and like can you tell us about that and how that proceeded?
Yeah. I found out I was pregnant in around August, September of 2023.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. And, I only had 1 ultrasound at about 6 weeks, 7 weeks,
Okay.
and everything looked normal, everything looked fine.
Okay.
Of course, he was just a little egg, so it was
Yeah.
really hard.
Yeah.
Um, but then I was living in Texas at the time,
Okay.
just broken up with the father of my child,
Okay.
and I had moved back out here with my dad because I was pregnant and couldn't work
Gotcha.
and couldn't sustain myself out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, so
Were
I
you
moved
e
back out. I'm sorry.
were you excited? Were you a little
Yeah,
like shocked, or I mean, tell me like cuz if you had just broken up, that would be I would feel a lot of different things I can imagine for myself. But how about what were you going through when you found out you were pregnant?
yeah. It was a very emotional roller coaster
Yeah.
at first, but then I got excited
Yeah.
because bringing a new life into this world it's special.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I ended up being excited.
Okay. Okay.
And then whenever I moved back out here, I got set up with my OB,
Okay.
and I got I got an ultrasound at, I want to say, 9 or 10 weeks.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
at that ultrasound, the first diagnosis that I had was that Kehpri only had half of his brain and that he was missing two chambers in his heart.
Oh, at that 9-week,
Yes.
they were able to see that clear, like, enough to say that there's kinda some issues.
Yes. Yes. So then that was the first diagnosis.
Okay.
Around my 20-week appointment, I
Okay.
ended up finding out that that was wrong. That was a misdiagnosis.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yes. So his heart was perfectly fine.
Okay.
That was not an issue, but he did have spina bifida,
Okay.
the neural tube defect, and the type of spina bifida he had was a cervical myelomeningocele. So it's a skin sac up
Yeah.
by the neck in the
Uh-huh.
cervical thoracic area
Yeah.
that has a buildup of spinal fluid and sometimes the nerves and just like everything that's like necessary.
Yeah.
Um, he ended up getting hydrocephalus, which is fluid in the brain,
Uh-huh.
from his brain stem pulling down into that neural tube defect, into the
Yeah.
skin sac.
Yeah.
From there, I got sent to a specialist that knew more about spina bifida.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got sent up to a specialist at OHSU
Mhm.
in Portland. Um, they ended up giving me a range of options from there, and I was up in Portland every week
Wow.
to get ultrasounds and
Oh,
blood work.
okay, so it
And
was pretty intense. Um,
yeah,
Emily, let me just back up for 2 seconds,
of
because, like,
course.
at 9 weeks, you got this very, like, your baby has half a brain and there's heart issues
Yeah.
and what were you thinking at that time when you got I mean, and what did they tell you? Like, we don't know, we need to wait. What did they tell you
Yeah.
at that time? And how did you feel when they were telling you what happened? Like what he was looking like?
Yeah. At that time, I was really heartbroken
Yeah.
because it went from everything being perfectly fine, I was having a healthy, normal pregnancy, to
Mhm.
all of a sudden he had a like less than 1% chance of living
Yeah.
uh, to birth. Even he
Right.
was going to be
Yeah.
stillborn. So it was really difficult at first,
Mhm.
but I still tried to hold out hope
Okay.
that, you know, maybe things would change. It's still early. You never know. Miracles
Okay.
happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was feeling pretty just heartbroken, as you
Yeah.
can imagine.
Yeah, I would be just devastated because you're like, "Wait, this was
Yeah.
gonna be fine. It was gonna be okay." And so they didn't have any were they basically saying, "Let's wait till 20 weeks when we can get a good like, a better picture of what he's looking like?"
Yeah, yeah. Just
Okay.
to kinda see, they were hoping that, like, he would still be alive at that time,
Mhm, mhm.
and he was, thankfully.
Yeah.
And, that's whenever I found out that that diagnosis was completely wrong.
Yeah.
Uh,
It would be kind of one of those things where you're like, "Yay!" But then also getting this other very,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
hard, diagnosis is also really, really tricky.
Yes. But since I already had that first misdiagnosis, I
Yeah,
held out even more hope, hoping that it was another
I
misdiagnosis,
see. Okay.
you know?
Yeah, no, yeah. You're
Yeah.
like, "Okay, you guys are crying wolf. I mean, I'm not gonna believe you."
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, man.
Um,
And, I know that, how were you feeling in that first trimester between that, the initial diagnosis and then getting into that 20 weeks? Were you feeling okay? Any morning
I
sickness or anything?
At exactly 9 weeks, the day I hit 9 weeks,
Uh-huh.
I ended up getting HG, hyperemesis gravidium,
Oh, yeah.
and I puked every morning from 9 weeks to 36 weeks. Yeah, nothing helped. I tried
Oh,
everything.
oh. You're like, "No, thanks. This is."
Yeah,
Oh.
it
Did you
was
have to go in for fluids or anything? Because I know some people
yeah,
get so, so sick that they
yeah.
cannot keep anything down and they are just essentially dehydrated and malnourished.
Yes, yeah, it
Oh,
was
ma
horrible. I had a plethora of meds, I had just a plethora of hospital visits, it was wild.
yeah, yeah, seriously.
Yeah,
I wanted to check with you, like, sometimes they do genetic testing
yes.
around, 9 to 12 weeks. I think it depends. Did you end up doing that because of that initial ultrasound?
Yeah, yes, the
Okay,
first ultrasound caused me to do the genetic
okay.
testing, and on my end, it ended up turning out like nothing was wrong. So, after that misdiagnosis, I thought everything was perfectly fine until the next diagnosis.
Oh my gosh. Okay, that would just be just like, "What is happening?" Because 'Cause you're like,
Yeah.
"This is not adding up at all."
No, it was so confusing.
Yeah, no, seriously, that is, like, really confusing.
Yes.
Okay, so then you were gonna wait and kind of watch. You were sick. You're very
Yes.
sick.
Yeah.
Um, at the time of the genetic testing, did you end up finding out if, what the gender was? Because I know you
Yes. Yeah.
can, but some
Yeah.
people don't. So you
Yeah,
did.
I did. I ended up
Okay.
finding out early because I was doing, like, early photo shoots just
Oh,
in case,
yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
so I ended up wanting to find out as early as possible to do, like, a gender reveal photo shoot.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, I did get that call and found out that it was a boy.
Yeah. How exciting. Were you feeling one way
Yeah.
or the other, boy, girl?
I always wanted a little boy.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Super fun. And then so did you start thinking of names at that time?
Yes. Yes, I did.
Okay.
Immediately.
Immediately. I know everybody starts getting their little list because they need to start evaluating and eliminating as needed.
Yes.
So, I think I'll ask about his name a little bit later just because I'm sure that that is or did you end up finding out, I mean, did you au automatically go to a particular name?
Yeah.
You
Yes.
did.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, tell me how you got to that name then, because I
I
think Kehpri
was
is a cool name.
Yeah, thank you. I just Googled up, like, unique baby boy names,
Uh-huh.
and I was going through, like, the alphabetical list,
Yeah.
and it had their meanings as well, and, like, everything, like, the origin of the name, like, the language and stuff as
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
and so I was just scrolling down the list, just looking, and
Mhm.
then all of a sudden, his name, Kehpri, just popped into my mind, or just popped, like, right into my
Mhm.
eye view,
Mhm.
uh and it means morning sun,
Oh.
and it's Egyptian.
Mm.
So I was like, okay, that sounds perfect, like my
Yeah.
little sunrise.
Yeah.
Um,
That's awesome. It's
yeah,
it's a cool name. I think it's such a cool name. I've never heard of it before, and I just think it's unique and really just a really cool name. So, and it
thank
sounds
you,
like like a very strong name too.
thank you. Yes,
So you did start calling him Capri? You think
yeah,
even okay, that's awesome. That's great.
yes,
It's kind of
thank
nice
you.
having that name association actually,
It is,
kind of
yes,
early on. So anyway, okay, cool. So let's go back. Let's jump back all the way to 20 weeks then. So you had your diagnosis, and so then that's when you got transferred over to OHSU.
yeah.
And we're going in out for weekly visits and such. So can tell me what they were saying at each of the visits, how he was progressing, because I'm sure that there was a lot of stuff that was being discussed and could have happened. So what did they say to you?
Yeah. At first, it was very discouraging
Yeah.
because normally with that type of spina bifida, it is a very, very low chance,
Yeah.
like 1 to 5%.
That they
Um,
would actually survive going to
yes.
birth. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah. That he would actually survive after birth.
After birth. Oh, after birth. Yeah.
He would survive through the pregnancy,
Yeah.
but they weren't
Once.
sure how long after he would.
Gotcha. Okay.
Uh, 'Cause, spina bifida is known as the snowflake condition. I don't know if you ever heard
I've
that
I've
term.
never heard that term. Can you tell me
Yeah.
what that means?
The snowflake condition is basically just it means that no condition of spina bifida is exactly the same.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. So
everything is a little different.
yeah, and so they're trying to pull enough information from different cases, but they can't tell
Yeah,
you for sure
no.
what's gonna actually happen. So
Mhm.
that's why there's
Yeah,
kind of that big range of there's a 1 to 5 chance or 1 to 20 chance of yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. But he's doing fine within when he's in your when he's in you, right? He's
Yeah.
fine. Okay.
Yes, at that 20 weeks, he seemed pretty fine.
Okay.
His heartbeat was normal.
Okay.
He I think at that time too had actually even started kicking and stuff, and he was moving more than they thought like he would ever.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, because I know that that is with spina bifida, there's always usually issues with walking and mobility, right?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. The first thing that I was told was that he would most likely be paralyzed from the neck down.
From the neck down, and
Yes.
that's a lot of aftercare. I just that's something that you probably were thinking about a lot.
Yeah, yeah. So at that first visit, I found out that he would most likely be paralyzed.
Mhm.
I found out he had hydrocephalus, which is
Yep.
fluid buildup in the brain.
Yep.
Um, I found out that he had Chiari-2 malformation as well,
Okay. Can you tell us
which
a little bit more about that?
yeah, it goes pretty much hand in hand with spina bifida and a lot of NTDs,
Mhm.
NTDs.
Yeah.
And
NTDs
it
is
basically
neural
neural
tube
tube
defects. Yeah.
defect.
Just want to make
Yes,
sure that everybody on the podcast understands what that is too. So,
of course. Yes. And it's basically just clubbed feet, so where his
mhm.
feet will be kinda turned and, like, curved.
Yeah.
Um, because they that normally goes hand in hand, so they just
Yeah.
automatically assumed that that would happen.
Yeah. Okay.
And then he was also diagnosed with myeloschisis,
Oh,
which I don't quite remember exactly what that was, but it goes hand in hand with spina bifida as well.
okay.
Pretty sure that it was just, like, the skin sac is what they called it, was myeloschisis,
Okay.
because he had a fluid skin sac in his neck.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a lot to learn and to hear and to find out when you're expecting, well, I guess you were also expecting some really terrible things to happen at the 20-week scan anyway, so
Yeah.
but to be handed also a very different and hard diagnosis is tricky too. So,
Yes, yeah, it's that from there, it started with the talk about medical termination as
okay.
well.
Okay. So what did you think about that when they suggested that?
I didn't look at that even as an option
Okay. Mhm.
because I held out so much hope, and
Yeah.
I was so excited, and I had made all these plans
Yeah.
and had already started getting ready, so I couldn't even imagine doing that to myself,
Yeah.
let alone him as
Yeah.
well, you
Yeah.
know?
Okay.
Um, and So, yeah, I took that out of the option, but then I was left with 2 other options
Okay.
at that appointment, which was either palliative care,
Mhm.
where he just goes straight to me, no medical intervention, like, nothing,
Right.
or he goes straight into surgery, straight into the NICU, goes through all the surgeries to drain the fluid, to
Yeah.
fix the lesion, just so much.
Yes. That's a that's because what I was about to say, what were the odds of them of him surviving if he didn't have any interventions, when he just would come straight to you?
The odds were very low, like
Mhm.
1% and below.
That he would
Um,
pass away very soon after birth.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
They well, at first, they didn't know. They couldn't
Mm.
give me a definite answer.
Mhm.
They kept saying, like, "We can't tell you for sure because every condition is different.
Yeah.
Like, until we get more research and until he gets bigger, like, we can't tell you for sure."
Yeah.
So, I didn't end up making a decision
Okay.
for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'd be like, "I need time to think about this and pray about
yeah,
this and, like, just talk to people about this, because this is." Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Did you have other people that you were chatting with, or that you would bounce ideas off of about, because this is,
Yeah,
I can imagine this would be really difficult for me just to try and work this out on my own. Um,
yeah. I was talking to my parents,
yeah.
my siblings, my friends.
Mhm.
I was just trying to gather, like, any opinion possible
Yeah.
because I was so lost at that moment.
Yeah.
I just had no idea what to even do.
Right.
And so, yeah, I was bouncing a couple ideas off and just, like, talking about it, but it still took me forever to reach a decision.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes. I would be like, "Ugh."
yeah.
Um, so this is actually always I think a tricky question, because you have this diagnosis that is can be fatal, right? I mean, but he also could make it. Did you end up having a baby shower or anything to
Um,
celebrate, or anything to, like, cuz that's tricky.
yeah.
I don't- yeah.
Uh, the extent that I did was I had a little gender reveal with my photographer while
Mhm.
doing maternity shoots, and I did just my maternity shoots with him.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, I didn't really feel up to doing all that,
All the
you
other
know?
things. I know that's hard, and I keep thinking of that, because I have a friend who she had a diagnosis that was going to be possibly fatal as well, and
Yeah,
um I was at a loss. I was like, "Do we throw a baby shower, or what do we throw?"
yeah,
Because you want to celebrate her as a mom, but it's hard.
it's
So,
difficult,
but
yes.
that is cool that you did maternity photos,
Thank you.
and did the gender reveal. So I think that's great. When did you do those about?
I did the gender reveal at 9 weeks. I
Okay.
actually was with my photographer whenever I got the call about the gender,
Uh
so
huh.
it worked out perfect.
You're like,
Yeah.
awesome.
And then I did a couple photo shoots in between, like, that time and the 36-week mark,
Yeah.
before I did my last maternity shoots before he came.
Okay. So it sounds like you did celebrate that anyway, because taking maternity photos is also so sweet, and so
Yes.
there's some good milestones there that you get to capture. So I think that's wonderful that you did that.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you're going along, you're still throwing up a lot. How are those weekly? Tell me, as they keep going along, tell me how things progress. Have you made up your mind of what you're going to do as the weeks get on?
Every appointment was just finding out a little bit more,
Mhm.
just a little bit more, and then from there, I was pretty much left with those only 2 options. About the 25, 26 week mark, I wanna say,
Okay.
was whenever I was told that if 'cause I ended up asking 'cause my original birth plan, whenever everything was perfectly fine,
Mhm.
was to do a water birth
Okay.
in a birthing center.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah, and
um,
I'm sure that they were like, "Actually, you can't do that anymore," or yeah, I don't know.
yeah, and so, upon bringing that up and asking if that was still possible, if that was still a possibility, I was told that if I chose the route for him to get all of the treatment and all the surgeries,
Yeah.
that I would need to have a C-section.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And so that changed things drastically for me.
Yes.
Um,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
I mean, that's like I've had a C-section and they're not easy. So, yeah,
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
just
Well,
so
especially I'm
yeah. Oh,
sorry.
go ahead. Go ahead. I interrupted, Emily.
You're all good. Especially since Kehpri is my first and only.
Mhm. Mhm.
I want to have a vaginal birth I wanted to have a
Yeah.
vaginal birth at some point. So C-section was not even an option
Yeah.
because you cannot have another vaginal birth after that. You have to have C-sections, is what
Yeah.
I was told.
Well, you can have a VBAC because I have done that actually too. So, but it just
Oh,
takes a bit more. You just need to make sure your body is healed. I'm sure they will talk to you about that type of thing
yeah.
uh, when that time comes. So, um, so yeah, that's a pretty big deal when it comes to making decisions about your body and how
Yes.
you want your son to be born. So if you didn't want any interventions, they did say that you could do a vaginal birth, or would it all be still C-section?
Yeah, if I chose the palliative route, then I was able to do a vaginal birth.
Okay.
That was
We're
the only way.
only way. Okay. And I suspect that were they concerned about when he comes through the birth canal that could put so much stress on the
On the
on that
skin sac.
fluid sac that is there that it
Yeah.
could cause more harm. And
Yes.
okay, I see. I
Yeah.
see. Wow, that is a lot. So, what were you thinking? What was your tell me your
Um,
train of thoughts when you found that out?
I was once again really devastated because another goal was once again crushed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another plan, you
Yeah.
know. So I had some really big decisions to make from that point,
Yeah.
and up until the labor time, up until birth, I had a really big decision to make, and so I was really just all over the place. It was a roller coaster of emotions,
Yeah.
uh, as you can imagine.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
yeah. It no. I don't it's like I don't want to think about having to make that kind of decision, honestly, Emily.
No,
I
no.
don't want to think about it. I can't
No.
believe that you're staring this down and just I no.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, as a mom, you have to do what you have to do.
Yeah, you do, and it sucks.
It sucks,
It
yes,
totally
but
sucks sometimes.
it
So,
does.
um,
Um,
oh, I was just gonna ask if you had, yeah, if you had made a decision or if you were gonna just kind of see when you got closer to when they were gonna deliver. And then also, did they say we're gonna cut you off? I'm not cut you off, but like we're gonna do it, we're gonna induce and or plan the C-section at a certain amount of time. I mean, like at a certain week.
yeah, the my C-section was actually planned on my birthday.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
for May 24th.
Okay.
So, yeah, so if I was going to go with the C-section, it would
Yeah.
have been on my birthday.
Okay. Wow.
Uh, yeah, so that's also a lot to take in and
Yeah.
a big decision
Yep.
added on.
Yep.
So then I didn't end up making my decision until I went in for my appointment at 36 weeks in 5 days,
Okay.
and it was just a regular ultrasound, and then they noticed that he had stopped practice breathing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So can you describe, I guess what that means and what they saw, so that
Yeah.
everybody can understand what that means?
Yeah. So around, I could be wrong, but around, I wanna say 35, 34 weeks is
Mhm.
whenever they start practice breathing inside of the womb to get ready for, breathing air outside.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they just basically swallow amniotic fluid, but you can see their lungs move
Okay.
in an ultrasound. And so he was doing that, and he actually started practice breathing early. He
Oh,
started practice breathing around that 25-week mark, so it was a couple weeks early. It was pretty
yeah.
early.
Yeah.
And they were pretty shocked. But, at that appointment, he was no longer practice breathing through the ultrasound,
Okay.
and so that raised a lot of concerns.
Yeah.
So then at that appointment was right whenever I had to either make a decision to go home and possibly not hear him the next time I come in, or,
Yeah.
have him be gone, or get induced that night.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and I had to make my decision whether I wanted palliative care that day or
Oh.
whether I wanted to go through the C-section
Oh my
that day
gosh.
as well.
That is rough.
Yeah. Um, I did leave out one thing,
Mhm.
one diagnosis. At about tw 28, 29 weeks,
Okay.
they were doing, I forget exactly what it's called, but they were looking at the nerves through, like, an ultrasound. It's a different kind of ultrasound, but they
Mhm.
can see, like, the blood movement and stuff,
Okay. Yeah.
and, like, the connections with the nerves.
Okay.
They had noticed that the nerve that controls everyday breathing for him was not connected all the way.
Oh.
It was, like, severely compressed from the hydrocephalus, so it
Oh
was
man.
causing it to, like, be disconnected a little bit.
Uh-huh.
So I was told that he would most likely need to be on a ventilator his
Yeah.
entire life, on a breathing machine.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Um,
adding that, yeah, that is a lot, Emily.
it was a lot, but then as well, I had to also keep in mind that with spina bifida being a snowflake condition, he could come out and it could
And
be fine.
yeah, yeah.
It could change, everything could change. So I was just kinda keeping everything in mind, doing a lot of research. I was doing so much research.
Mhm.
But then, yeah, fast forward back to that day that he stopped practice breathing at about 36 weeks.
Mhm.
It was April 17th. I went
Okay.
in for that ultrasound. And then, yeah, I found out he wasn't practice breathing. So I sat for a while and decided that I was going to get induced that day.
Okay.
And then also had to decide that I wanted to do the palliative birth
Okay.
so I could vaginally birth, and just see where things went.
Okay.
I don't know if you have anything you wanna ask or
Well, I'm just like, "Oh, man, that I just don't this is a lot to decide." And that's the tricky thing because
Yes.
waiting could mean whether you meet your baby or not. That
Mm,
sounds really terrible. So I know that they're in a bad situation when they have to ask you these things and say you need to make a decision in the next half an hour, or
yes.
it could mean that you're not going to meet your baby.
Yes.
And then just
Yeah.
having to also make that decision, that is really hard. Did you end up calling anybody or at that time to help you with that decision? I know that, like you said, the father's out of the picture. Sounds like you
Yeah.
consulted with your parents
Yeah.
and siblings and stuff like that. But I'm assuming it was ultimately your decision about what you wanted to
Yeah.
do. Okay.
Yeah. The only people I really called at that time was my father, because he
Okay.
lives in the area
Yeah.
since I live with him,
Yeah.
to make it out there since I was getting induced.
Yeah.
And my 2 doulas that I had as well,
Oh,
because
okay.
it all just happened so unexpectedly.
Yes. Yes.
So I had to update them, obviously,
Yeah.
and get them out here.
Okay.
Uh, and I kinda just consulted with them at first, and they were like, "Well, the decision is ultimately up to you." My doulas were saying that to me,
Yes.
but they were like, "I if it were up to me personally, I would like to meet my baby, and I know that that was ultimately your goal as well, so I think that you should get induced."
Hmm.
And so I did. I decided to get induced, and I was in labor for 24 hours.
You were.
Yes,
Okay.
it
So
was
you entered the hospital. I mean, like, you were at that appointment and then
Mhm.
you didn't even go home. You
Nope.
got admitted
I
just right then and there.
Yeah, I
Oh,
stayed overnight that night because it was already, like, about 5 or 6 that I made the decision to get induced.
okay.
So I stayed that night. I started an induction, the morning of the 18th.
Okay.
Early in the morning, it was, like, 8, I
Okay.
started. And so, yeah, I was in labor for 24 hours, that whole day.
That's rough. I know,
Yeah.
and that Pitocin can be, I mean, I don't know what
Yeah.
they induced you with, but
Yeah.
I like some of it can be real intense and bring on labor real intense. So, did you when they were talking to you about what did they kind of prep you like what's going to happen even though you're going the palliative care route? Did they kind of prep you on what was going to happen and what that was going to look like?
Basically, the only thing I was told at that point was that he would come straight from me to my
Mhm.
chest.
Mhm.
He wouldn't go get weighed, he wouldn't like, they wouldn't mess with him at all.
Okay.
He would just come straight to me and just get, like, that chest-to-chest time
Yeah.
and that bonding time with me for as long as he lived.
Okay.
Um, and whenever I was in labor, I did end up asking the question of whenever he's born, like after he was born, if I could like ultimately change my decision, if he came out breathing and came out like alive for a couple of hours, if I could change my decision for him to get medically treated,
Okay.
go through the surgeries.
Yeah.
And that ultimately was a no.
Oh, really?
But yeah, yeah.
Oh.
So I had to stick with my palliative care, and there was nothing that they could do.
Oh,
Yeah,
man, that's rough.
yeah. Um, but yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, I'm sure that there's some reason for that. Medically speaking, I don't
Yeah,
yeah, I don't
yeah,
know what that looks like. So, but you are also just like I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, I've chosen this route. There's a chance he could live, but there's a very high chance that he could just pass
yeah,
away while I'm
yeah,
holding him.
yeah, yeah, especially since with spina bifida, treatment is needed, like, right after they come out. They need
Yeah.
to go in surgery and get the fluid drained and get that skin sac fixed up and everything in place, otherwise, it can cause serious damage as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have you had 2 really crappy options. I Is all I can say.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Um, where the hospital you got induced. You stayed the night over. You got in started induction around 8 in the morning. Did anybody come and join you? Did your dad come or anybody else was there with you?
My dad didn't come until the night of the 18th,
Okay, okay.
but my doulas came and joined me, like,
Great.
that day. So they
Okay.
were there with me the whole day, helping me through labor.
Awesome.
They were amazing. They brought
Okay.
those a bunch of little gadgets and stuff, and
Okay.
made it easy.
Yes. So doulas are I just can't speak highly enough of doulas. They just
No,
do amazing work. That's all I
they
could
are.
say.
Yes.
And the fact that you had a couple of them that could maybe, go back and forth or and help you throughout this entire process. Were you were you planning on getting any like an epidural or any pain relief during the laboring process?
Initially, no. I had
Okay.
started out using the gas. I forget what the name of it is,
Yeah.
but using the I think
Like
it's
nitrogen gas or something?
yeah, like nitrogen, yeah,
Yeah.
something
Okay.
like that, yeah.
Okay.
I started out using that. I didn't wanna get an epidural at first,
Okay.
and I didn't up until, like, right before you couldn't anymore. I think I was, like, 7 centimeters dilated whenever I ultimately was like, "I need this."
Yeah, you're like, I am in a lot of pain.
Yeah, yeah, I was, like, 7 centimeters, and it was, like, 11 o'clock at night, midnight, so
Okay.
I was done. I just wanted to go to sleep.
Yeah. I was gonna say you must be exhausted because I would be. Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know if you slept that first night, but I suspect there was probably very little sleep actually
Yeah.
that night. So
Yeah, yeah. I had a lot of decisions, but,
yeah.
so yeah, I was so exhausted. I was like, "Just give me the epidural. I just
Yeah.
wanna go to sleep."
Yeah. Please something.
Yeah, something.
So were
So
they
yeah,
able to place it,
yeah,
without any issue? Okay, because sometimes people's epidural stories can be kinda horrifying too,
yeah,
I've heard.
yeah. I was like mine was placed pretty well.
Okay,
I was told that I had held still really well.
okay.
I think that it might have got messed up a little bit because they had to up my dosage.
Oh,
Because at
okay.
first it didn't numb me.
Oh,
So I think they might have messed up a little bit,
okay.
and also because I still have really bad pain in my back
Mm, mm,
after.
darn it. Okay, yeah,
So, but
gotcha.
I know it happens. It's just a normal risk
Yeah,
anytime.
yeah. Okay,
But
so that gave you a little bit of relief once they kind of figured up the dose and such,
yeah,
so
yeah,
and were you able to sleep during that
yeah,
time?
yeah. I ended up getting some medication to help me sleep that night, just
Okay,
because I was tired, but I couldn't sleep because I
yeah,
was low key excited, but also
yeah,
really nervous.
yeah,
It was just a lot of emotions.
yeah.
But
Yeah, so
after I
many.
got that medic,
I was just thinking, yeah, so many emotions that you were feeling. I can imagine. Yeah, it's
yeah,
overwhelming.
yeah. Uh, so yeah, that night I got the sleeping meds, and right after though, I knocked right out. I was
Mhm.
out cold.
Okay.
Slept. And then as soon as I woke up, it was like 7:40 in the morning I woke
Okay.
up. The nurse came in, was doing, like, the normal checks,
Yeah.
was just, like, getting things ready, and then my dad woke up, and he went to go move his car and grab me a coffee.
Yeah.
And the very first, cervical check that she did, that the nurse did as soon as my dad left,
Yeah.
his head was poking out.
Oh,
As soon as I woke up, he was
yeah.
crowning.
Yeah. He's
Yeah,
here. He's about to
he's
be
here.
born. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
Yeah, so I panic called, my dad who just left. I panic called my doulas who were staying in a hotel that night,
Okay.
and, I tried to hold him. I did. I tried my very best. I
Yeah.
tried.
Y I mean, if his head's poking out, it's kind of like
It's
he's coming.
yeah,
Sorry,
there's
guys.
yeah, there's no stopping it, but I
Yeah.
didn't try to push, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I wanted my doulas to be there at least.
Mhm.
I wasn't too worried about my dad being there,
Mhm.
you know, given my dad.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
But I definitely wanted my doulas there, yes.
Okay.
But it ended up just being me and the nurse
Okay.
whenever he came out at 8 in the morning.
Oh my gosh. And I'm assuming
Mm,
you just I mean, I know that you weren't trying to push, but it sounds like
no.
you came out pretty quickly,
Yeah,
despite that, right?
yeah, he was ready.
He was
He
ready.
he wanted to meet me. He
Yeah.
he wasn't having it.
Well, and I was gonna say, it was just you and the nurse, then it sounds like the doctor didn't even make it in
Oh,
time.
yeah, no, no one did. No one. He
Yeah, he was
wanted it to
excited.
just be a
He
s
was excited.
yes, yeah, he wanted it to just be a special moment.
That's that's cool. Okay, so then he was born,
Yes.
and how did he look? What
He
happened after that?
looked he looked pretty normal.
Mhm.
He had a head full of hair.
Really?
He had so much hair. All the nurses were like, "That is so much hair. That's the most hair I've seen."
That's so
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. He only had a very little skin sac compared to what I was told they seen.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, it was maybe an inch long,
Okay.
maybe. It wasn't even that bad,
Okay.
but his breathing nerve was not connected,
It
like they said.
wasn't.
No.
Oh.
He did come out breathing at first, but he only took maybe 3 to 4 breaths in the 5 hours he was alive.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he took very little breaths, and
Like,
his heart kept beating.
oh my
Yeah, and
gosh.
it was, like, gasps of air,
Yeah.
but with every breath he took, he would coo at me. He would make a little noise.
Really?
He would talk to me, yeah. It
Oh.
was the most precious thing ever. With just a little amount of breaths, I got a coo every single time.
Oh my gosh.
It was beautiful.
Yeah.
Um, since it was only me and the nurse, I got to cut his umbilical cord
Oh, he did.
myself and, brought him right up to my chest. He did a one little breath and then lifted his head up and looked back at the nurse and made a funny little face. It was so goofy. He
The fact that
yeah,
he
made
lifted up his head, that is like
yeah.
that's a lot of neck strength. I was like, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was not even a minute after birth too, like, I had just put him up to my chest, and the
Mhm.
nurse was just taking the stethoscope to listen for his heartbeat, and
Yeah.
he has his head turned
He's like,
back and
"What are you
off my
doing?
chest.
That thing is
Yeah,
cold."
yeah, yeah, and I'll, of course, send you a picture of that too, I have
Yeah.
that
Oh.
copy. I thankfully caught that on picture. My
Yeah.
doulas came in right as soon as they were putting him on my chest,
Oh, that is
and then my
okay then.
dad came after, like, they both came at the same time.
Okay,
It was
okay.
awesome. But yeah, I did end up getting a bunch of pictures, thankfully,
Oh, good.
for my doulas. As soon as she ran in, she was like, "Where's your phone?"
Yeah,
And she
I need to
grabbed
take all
it.
the pictures. Yay.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, he only lived for 5 hours from 8 AM to noon,
Okay.
which is morning sun.
Yeah.
It's the morning sun.
Yeah. I can't believe how appropriate his name is, like, seriously.
It was so perfect,
Yeah.
so perfect. but I got a pretty good amount of time with him,
with him. Yeah.
considering how little he was breathing.
Yeah.
Um, he was he was 8 pounds, 4 ounces, and 15 inches and 3/4 long.
What? Oh, he was a big
He was a
little guy, right?
he was a big boy.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
36 weeks, 36,
Yeah.
37 weeks.
Yes.
That's a good little size there, little guy.
Yeah. And he had big feet. Well, I'm 6'2", if that gives
Okay.
you
Yes, okay, that makes a little bit more sense. Yes, that does make more
Yes.
sense.
Yeah. So, yeah, he was generally really, really good and really healthy looking for his size.
Yeah,
He never opened his eyes though, so
he
I never
didn't.
got to see what color they were.
Okay.
You know, yeah.
Yeah,
And he never cried.
he never
That's
cried.
one thing that I will point out is he never cried.
Yeah,
All he did was talk to me. He did
yeah,
little coos.
which is so sweet. Like,
So beautiful. It's the best thing you could ask for because babies don't normally coo at first.
yeah,
It was beautiful.
yeah.
Beautiful.
Oh, during that time, can you tell me what you did with
Yeah,
him? Because I know that that's like, I don't like this because the
I know.
you're just like, how long is he gonna live? That's the thing that, like, with some of my friends who have had a baby that has had some genetic abnormality, they just don't know, and so there's
No.
this great rush, like, to try and get everything done, and how terrible it is to think of, I'm gonna get all of my time with my son in as 30 minutes, an hour, 5 hours.
Yeah.
You just don't know. It's
Yeah.
crappy. I'm so sorry. This is
It happens. It
yeah.
happens. I feel like it's honestly for the better at this point. He would have
Mhm.
had a miserable life living in the hospital.
Yeah. Yeah.
He would have most likely never left the hospital.
Yeah.
So, I think it's better.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I ultimately had no idea. I just cherished every moment I had.
Okay.
Um, at first, I couldn't even cry. I couldn't. I was happy, I was smiling, and,
You
like,
have your baby. Yeah.
yeah, I had so much hope, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and I ultimately was the one that called the nurse in and said that he had passed away.
Okay.
I noticed about after, like, 30 minutes, maybe it was, like, an hour and 30 minutes. It might have
Mhm.
been way longer. Time felt like it flew by.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but he didn't take another breath.
Mm.
He wasn't moving his fingers, he wasn't grasping, he was moving his fingers and his legs. He
Mhm.
did come out moving all of his extremities.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah, yeah. So he would have been that case if he lived, that wouldn't have been a paraplegic or a quadriplegic even. Um, but yeah, I noticed he was no longer moving, he wasn't breathing, so I called the nurse in and she confirmed that he had indeed passed away at noon. So I spent as much time as I could with him in those hours. I got as many pictures, took as many videos, just held him and kissed him and just showed him as much love as I could, you know.
Yeah.
I wanted him to know that he was loved no
Yeah.
matter how long he lived.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's what I did. I didn't
That's
let him go.
like, I'm holding him. Thank you very much. Nobody touch him. He's mine.
Well, I did let him go to my dad, but my
Okay.
dad
Okay.
my dad didn't wanna hold him for very long because
Yeah.
he knew how special that moment was for me.
Yes. Yes, exactly. And smart dad. That's a good smart
Yes.
dad.
Yeah. No, he was amazing. He
Yeah.
was.
Oh,
Um, but yeah,
that this is that is I'm so sorry.
it's okay.
And
He's in a better place.
yeah. Yeah. It sounds like after he passed away, after the nurse came in and said that he had passed away, did they give you time with him after he
Yeah.
passed away as well, and did you keep him for a little while because it's always tricky when in those situations of like how long do hospitals allow them to stay in your room, that type of thing, and
Yeah.
it's yeah. So were you able to keep him for a bit longer?
Yeah, OHSU was amazing. They made me a bunch of memorials.
Mhm.
They, like they did just so much,
Oh,
but
good.
they ended up letting me keep him for an embarrassingly long time.
Just great.
I I had him for 5 hours after he passed away.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I had him for 10 hours initially entirely.
That's great. And I think that is like being able to take that time and then so it sounds like the nursing staff was able to maybe do some handprints or something or did they like what did they do any molds or
Yeah,
handprints and stuff? Okay, they were.
yeah. I have handprints, I have footprints, and, although me and his dad weren't together,
Mhm.
we were ready to co-parent, you know? So we were
Okay.
still civil. We weren't
Okay.
talking on the daily, but we were still civil.
Okay.
So I asked them to make double of everything for him.
Oh, awesome.
So they did. They made double of everything for him. They took little memorial pictures, and they made
Okay.
double for him, so I had some and he did.
Yeah.
They cut a piece of his hair, so I
Oh,
have a little lock of his hair in a jar.
yeah.
They gave me a special blanket to put him in
Okay.
and let me keep instead of, like, a regular hospital blanket. It's
Yeah.
like this really soft, plush, like,
Oh.
starred blanket.
Oh, yeah.
Um, they just they made sure that I let him be comfortable as well whenever
Mhm.
he was living about to pass away.
Yeah.
I ended up giving him morphine in the last maybe hour of his life.
Oh, so he
I
could
gave
have
him a little bit of morphine just to make sure he was
he
comfy.
was comfortable.
I have a history of CNA, so
Yeah.
I CNA in hospice care,
Yeah,
end
yeah,
of life,
you're
so
very familiar. That's great because that like, people don't realize how yeah, we can help people through this yeah,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
transition time. Yeah.
yeah, it makes you comfortable,
Yeah.
and so, yeah, they did all that, but I kept him for an embarrassingly long
Well, it's
time.
good. It's good. It's good, right?
It
You're
was.
yeah,
It gave me proper time to kind of say goodbye,
yeah,
you know? It wasn't until after he was pronounced passed away that
yeah,
I cried, and I didn't stop crying after that.
yeah,
Um, but they did end up letting me go home that night,
they did. Okay.
so I ended up leaving around, like, 6 or 7
Okay.
after I gave Kehpri back.
Yeah. Were you feeling okay after the vaginal birth?
Yeah, I it didn't hurt very much,
Okay.
I had no tearing,
Okay.
I was generally really lucky. I
Okay.
didn't hemorrhage, like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
yeah, I was really lucky.
Okay. So
Um,
feeling okay. That's why they I know most people are like, get me out of this hospital. I do not want to be
yeah,
here. I am mad. I'm sad. And once they give up their baby to be
yeah,
taken, it's like, nope, I don't want to be here. Why
yeah, and
it's
they completely understood that. They
okay.
actually gave me the option of going home since
Okay.
I looked so good.
Okay. Good.
Um, it was a 4-hour drive home, and I will
Oh,
say after an epidural, it was so excruciating. It
yeah.
was.
I'm sure that was
Yeah. But yeah, they did amazing, and I have a lot of keepsakes.
good.
I'm
Good.
thankful.
That's good.
Yeah,
When they I'm sure it sounds like the nursing staff was awesome and
they
they were or the staff in general was awesome. Did they tell you like I'm sure they came in and chatted with you about what you wanted to do with his body afterward.
yeah.
How did that go? Like that didn't go over well with me when they start asking questions. It's like, ugh. But yeah,
No.
tell me what you how that worked and did your doulas maybe kind of help with that conversation too?
Yeah. Yeah, they helped out a lot. I
Good.
was so emotionally drained. I felt like I couldn't even make any more decisions at that
Okay.
point.
Yeah.
I My brain had shut off.
Yeah.
I shut down.
Yeah.
Probably wasn't the best thing, but they did end up helping me, and, I ultimately chose to get him cremated
Okay.
and sent to a morgue down close by me.
Okay.
So yeah, it was a hard decision to make that same day and
Yeah.
like only a couple hours after.
Yeah.
But my doulas, thankfully, they helped me so much.
Okay.
They were amazing.
Yeah, I think that's the cool thing about the doula, what doulas do is they help, they are a liaison, and they're a good advocate for the patient. I just think they're
Yeah,
excellent. They're
yeah.
excellent.
Well, and I think it was especially helpful too, since I had a birth doula and a death doula.
Oh, so okay.
Yeah.
That's so, so helpful because
Yes.
they know the different challenges that,
Yeah, yeah, and they both were bouncing ideas off of each other and helping
mhm,
each other, like, kind of get the best opinion for me,
yeah. Okay.
and it was amazing. Amazing.
That is that is great. I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I've never seen 2 of them before," but that totally makes sense that you got 2 of them, and
Yeah.
because you knew that there was a chance that he was gonna pass, and,
Yes. Yeah.
having that, uh, having them both there, I think that's
It was amazing.
yeah,
It
I
made
was
life
like
so
s
easy.
yeah, super helpful. Okay, so then you headed back home. Were you able to get his remains a little bit later? I just don't like, especially since there's a 4-hour drive from
Yeah.
where he was at and where he needs to go to. Um,
Yeah.
did that happen very quickly, or did it take a bit of time to get his remains?
I didn't end up deciding exactly what funeral home
Okay,
for, like, a week after.
gotcha.
I knew that I wanted him cremated, and I knew that I wanted a service,
Uh-huh.
but I didn't know exactly where.
Okay.
So I had that whole week to try to set that up as well.
Okay.
Um,
That is not a fun decision to do.
no,
Like,
no,
yeah, not
no.
at all.
I will say, thankfully, because of my hospice experience
Mhm.
with CNA's passing,
Oh,
I
okay.
know a few good funeral homes in my area. So
Okay.
I already had a couple in mind. I just had to call them and figure everything out.
Gotcha. Okay. And then you were
Yeah,
able to do that from there. So
yeah,
I'm just saying that you're extremely, I appreciate that you are so, I wouldn't say like, I guess level headed is very, a good way of putting it is that you seem to be,
yeah.
you try to be knowledgeable and do the best thing for your son and for yourself. So
Yes,
that's great.
yes.
So you
Thank
did,
you.
and you did want to have a service of some sort for him.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Um,
Tell me how you planned that and how did that look?
it was it was pretty difficult, I will say.
Mhm.
I figured out the funeral home, like, a week after.
Mhm.
They didn't have well, I had to talk with the father because I wanted him there.
Okay.
I wanted him there.
Yeah.
He was down in Texas. He's down in
Right.
Texas.
Yeah.
So, it would, like, be him flying out here, so we
Mhm.
just kinda
Mhm.
had to, like,
Work
get the
out.
dates right. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Okay.
look
Yeah.
at our
Uh-huh.
schedules.
Yeah.
Um, and so I had to kinda do that. So his funeral was set up for May 10th,
Okay.
about a month after he had been born and passed away.
Okay.
He had got sent down to the funeral home a week and 4 days after he had passed away
Mhm.
and had got cremated the next day.
Okay.
I had a chance to go and see him before they cremated him in the
Oh, okay.
funeral home.
Okay.
I I had the option, I will say. I chose
Yes.
not to.
Okay. Okay.
I personally chose not to.
Yeah. That's totally fine because it had been
Yes.
what a month
Yes.
and several days. So
Yeah.
that's tricky. Yes, it can be
Yeah,
tricky.
I couldn't imagine.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I wanted to see him how I seen him the day he was born.
Exactly. Just remember him the way
Yes,
he was. And that is
yes.
wonderful too.
Yeah. So yeah, I chose not to go see him before they cremated him and not to be there for the cremation either. They gave me
Mhm.
that option too.
Okay.
But I got his ashes
Mhm.
the day of the service, before everyone showed up, and I didn't, like, barely plan his service. Like, I put my opinions in, but one of my friends helped so much
Oh.
because I was gone.
Yeah.
I couldn't think, I couldn't make a decision, like, I had no idea where to even start. I had never planned out a funeral
Oh,
in my
yeah. No. You
life.
This is always so shocking. Like, it's so shocking to be like, I shouldn't be planning this person's
No.
funeral. This is a baby. Like,
Yeah.
it's so
Yeah.
unnatural and so absurd. It feels
Yeah.
it's so dumb. I just like, this
Yeah.
is so dumb. Why am I
Yeah.
doing this? And yeah, you would be like, what? Yeah. So that's cool that your friend stepped in and helped.
She was amazing. She helped me put, like, everything together. She helped me decorate.
Hmm.
Like, she just asked me if it looked okay, and I was like, "Yes." Like, "Yeah, yeah, that looks, like, perfectly fine."
Yeah.
Um, she helped me, like, pick out all the snacks. I had snacks there. She helped
Hmm.
me just, like, pick out everything and put everything together, and
That's wonderful.
it made it easy.
Awesome.
Even though it was the hardest day of my life,
Yeah.
it made it just a little bit easier, you
Yeah.
know?
That's when
Um,
people step up and they take care of you when you can't take care of yourself. So,
yeah, it was very special. Um, but she was there with me setting up, so she was there whenever I first got his ashes. And at first, I handled it pretty well. I think I just knew that I had to stay strong since I kind of had to be a host at the same time, you know?
which is
Um,
totally not fair. I'm just saying.
no, yeah, no. But that's just kind of like how my mind worked at that
Yeah.
time,
No.
you
Yeah.
know? I was like, I have to host this. I have to make sure
Yeah.
it goes like perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Like everything has to go right.
Yeah.
So I stayed strong, and it wasn't until the music started playing that I just sat up in the front row and just fell apart.
Yeah.
I fell apart. Thankfully, all my friends and family came up and they just put a hand on my back and just let me cry. And they didn't say anything. They just let me cry. And uh, after that, I no longer felt like I needed to be strong. I felt like I could start the grieving process, you know,
Yeah.
as I had nothing else to plan.
Yeah.
I had gotten everything. The only thing I was waiting on was his death certificate. That was about it.
Hmm.
But his service went beautifully. It went pretty much just as planned.
Hmm.
I did live stream it for friends and family.
Okay.
So it was live streamed, and I just had so much support in that moment, more support than I thought that I had.
Yeah.
Um, it was beautiful.
That's wonderful. I'm so, so happy to hear that because, yeah, yeah. I love how so many people came up and just let you cry.
Yeah, just made sure to let me know that they were there.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
know,
And that's sometimes just all you need in
yeah,
those
it was
times.
beautiful. Yes.
During the service itself, did you have anybody in particular speak or can you want to tell me what the program was?
Yeah. At first, I was just like setting up all the technical difficulties, you know, making sure the live stream was right, making sure
Mhm.
that I had the
Mhm.
music set up,
Mhm.
um, and just make sure that everything was set up and ready to go. And then it started off by me speaking, and I just kind of like introduced and just had a couple words to say and just kind of talked like about him and his story. And
Mhm.
then I didn't have anything planned
Okay.
at all.
Okay.
I just kind of went with the flow.
Okay.
So after I was done speaking, I was like, if there's anyone that wants to like come up and speak, you're more than welcome to. You're more than welcome to. And the only people that came up and spoke were my two doulas.
Oh,
Yeah, they came up and they spoke on his behalf and on my behalf, and it was really beautiful.
that's
And
great.
yeah, they had a lot to mention about just how precious he was and how much time he ultimately gave me. I was like, I'm so blessed
Yeah.
with how little breaths he took too. Like,
Yeah.
there's no way. No,
Yeah.
that's a miracle within itself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's
So
yeah, the time that
yeah,
you had with him and that is wonderful. I think that's cool that your doulas spoke and because they
yeah,
were there and they were able to speak about the experience and
yeah,
who he was and that's wonderful.
yeah. My father ended up not wanting to speak
Mhm.
just because he was emotional, and that was his very first funeral too.
Oh,
So it was, yeah, it was all of our first funerals, my first one planning. I'm only 22.
yeah. So, I mean, yeah, exactly. I was like, you're like, why
Yeah.
would you have had an opportunity to plan a funeral is all I'm saying, is
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
like, it's
no.
just silly. Like, you're too
No.
young to plan a funeral. Like, the
Yes.
people that
Yeah.
have babies that die are too young to have a funeral.
Way too young.
That's all I
Yeah.
can say. So, yeah,
You should
it's
never have to.
no, it's just it feels so
Yeah.
unfair. So,
Yeah. Um, but yeah, no one else wanted to speak. It was just
mhm,
my doulas.
mhm,
So it was really, really awesome just to have all that support and just to have people being there grieving him with me,
yeah,
and celebrating his life. I didn't really look at it as a funeral. I more looked at it as a celebration of life.
yeah, yeah. Yes, exactly, because you get to talk about him, and I mean, I suspect that because it was so far away,
Yeah.
that, and not very many people were able to come for one reason or the other, and then also you're like, "I'm gonna spend all my time with him," so you don't you don't get to hold him.
Yeah.
So it was good that you get to share him, like,
Yeah.
at that
Yeah.
time. That was a way
It
to
was.
share him.
It was. Yes. It was really beautiful, and I'm thankful that I had my brother and his girlfriend show up to the
Okay,
funeral.
okay.
She was pregnant at that time. We were supposed to have our babies around the same time.
Oh,
Yeah, so she showed up to Kepri's funeral 7 months pregnant
oh my gosh.
and got to witness that while she was pregnant,
Yeah,
and she still showed up for me.
yeah,
It was just a very beautiful service. It was.
good.
My little nephew ended up coming out looking a lot like Kehpri.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
He came out with really thick hair too,
really?
so yeah.
I know that's gonna be, it's always a little tricky, I think, because 'cause you'll be, like, always forever thinking
Oh,
about Kepri whenever you
oh,
see him, because that's what I do when I look at my 2 little nieces that were born just a couple months before our son was born. So, I mean,
mhm.
obviously not they're not gonna look like them per se, but I was like, he would be their size and doing what they're
Yeah,
doing, and so,
yeah. It's a little difficult, but I'm really happy for them.
yeah.
I just as a lost mom, I don't want anyone to ever feel the pain that I feel.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. I was like,
So
"I hope you never join this club. Thank you very
no.
much." Yeah.
Yeah, no, this is not the club you
Nope.
wanna be in.
Nope. Nope. Not one bit. I mean, there's some really dang awesome people in this club, but you don't
There
wanna
are.
join it. Yeah,
Yeah,
there really
no.
are.
Yeah, I've met amazing people,
Yeah.
including you.
Yeah.
So
And yeah, I know. I was like, when I talked with you last week, I was like, "Oh, this is so great to just to
yes.
meet you and be in this really crappy same boat."
Yeah.
Unfortunately. So,
Mm,
Emily, thank you so much for
of course.
sharing your story of Kepri and what a little fighter. Like seriously, I just think of his life and his big change in your life. I can tell that he's changed who you are, and
Yeah.
so thank you so much for sharing with us his life.
Yes, ma'am, of course. Thank you so much for letting me.
Yes, of course.